And my guest this morning in the studio is Jess. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning, Bill.
And can you say that in the native tongue that you going out to help?
Oye alre, Bill.
Thank you very much for that. And that was good morning or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, the world has opened this morning.
Beautiful. Okay. And Jess works for Positive Aid, and Positive Aid is about linking international best practices with Indigenous knowledge and systems and working together with the communities to achieve sustainable and positive outcomes to problems such as HIV and AIDS. And Positive Aid works within and encourages the communities to enjoy and control their own development and engage in initiatives that build capacity. Now, Jess, tell us how all this started.
Well, thanks, Bill. This started around 10 years ago when I first went across to Kenya myself as a volunteer. And at that point in time, I thought that I'd just do a 3-month voluntary stint and just lend a hand and see some of the world. And the place ended up getting under my skin, and now we're involved in this whole organisation.
And what made you want to go into a place so, and when was that, would be about 10 years ago?
Yes, exactly.
So remote and so different to the soft life you had here doing what was it, music at Melbourne College for the Arts?
That's right, yes. Yeah. I think I was quite curious at that stage. I was interested in travelling to somewhere that was very different to home, which Kenya definitely is. I also wanted to lend a hand. That's why I became interested in volunteering my time. So I ended up working at a volunteer orphanage for babies and also teaching some English at the same time.
And this was in Kenya itself? In Kenya,
yes.
Whereabouts?
In the western part of the country. It's quite near Lake Victoria, near the Ugandan border.
So it was good scenery?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was a lot, actually, more green than what I was imagining. And, yeah, lots of activity, lots of energy. The people were amazing. Lots of beautiful sights and sounds.
Great. And you were there for 3 months initially?
Yes.
And you came back. What happened next?
When I came back, I think things had changed a little bit for me. I lost a little bit of my passion with music, and instead I developed a really strong interest in Africa and the problems that developing countries face in general. So I became interested in studying again, and I went back to uni and did my Masters in International Development so that I could learn more about what can be done.
And I guess it was those little kids' faces that set a lot of this on the road as well in the orphanage.
Definitely, yeah. That was very moving, some of the things that I saw. And
what did you see there in your first what would you call it, emigration to Kenya?
Well, I guess, that first stint over there was a little bit sheltered for me because I had other Australians around me, and we had, fairly good security systems and electricity and water and so on.
Right.
But still I found that it was quite a challenge. It was very different to home. It was less comfortable. Some of the poverty was quite confronting in some ways. So I was shocked at some things. I was inspired at a lot of things, and I guess it was full of ups and downs, that first trip for me.
So the first trip you had all amenities. You had power, you had water and sustenance.
That's right. And we were actually quite close to quite a main road, so we could just jump on a bus at any point in time and go and shop in a supermarket, for example. So we actually cooked a lot of our own food, and it became, of course, Western food because we didn't know how to cook the African-style food.
Right. Is it much different, the African-style food?
Yeah, it's very different. It's the staple food is called ugali in Kenya, and that's a mix of basically boiling water with maize meal, and you mix that up together to form like a really heavy dough. So it's very simple, heavy food, and you'd probably eat that with some kind of spinach, and that forms the majority of the meals that you'd have throughout the year.
So it's mainly vegetarian?
Yeah, just due to the poverty, really. There is a little bit of meat available and fish, but it's basically for special occasions on Christmas or something celebratory.
And just set the scene, you're in a reasonable sized town, but when you went back the next time, you went into a remote area?
Yeah, I think each time that I went back to Kenya, I've moved further and further off the beaten track. So the second time I went to a smaller town again, and then the third time I was able to find myself in the village, the the proper village, so it's much more remote. There's no water, there's no electricity. It's mud huts with grass thatch roofs. It's quite a traditional setting. And
it is a stable community. It's not a mobile community as such, where they pick up and go.
Yes, no, it's not nomadic. The population is set, and they end up cropping and harvesting and so on. So they're in the same area always.
So it's again basic crop.
That's right. Yeah, they have a variety of grains that they grow. They're very reliant on the weather conditions, of course. So
as a farmer, you get one shot at it each year, don't you?
That's right. And they don't have very sophisticated irrigation systems or fertilisers or any kind of technology to use. So
it's primitive farming.
It's very primitive, and the people are quite vulnerable to the weather conditions. So lately we've seen floods. We've also seen drought in Kenya. So it's a challenge.
Bushfires?
Not so much bushfires in that part of the world at the moment, yeah.
And just give us a brief description of the facilities there. Water?
We have a river close by, so in terms of getting water, you'd actually just have to walk to the river, grab a bucket and carry it back on your head to use at home.
Shower?
You'd bathe in the river.
Power?
No electricity to speak of in the village areas.
Plenty of solar power?
Well, there's the sun, but once the sun goes down, there's no batteries or anything like that. So it's.
So what do they? What happens at night time?
Not a whole lot goes on at night time. I mean, people do socialise, and families are very strong. So people would sit around in the hut, even if they're in the dark together, and just talk about how the day was and everyday things.
Right. So what is sort of the sunrise, sunset sort of period over there?
It's on the equator. I think it's pretty much 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. roughly. Right.
So, and culture, completely different to European or Australian culture as we know it?
Yeah, it's very different, Bill. Very much traditional beliefs. There's not a lot of kind of Western science or modern ideas that have infiltrated this particular community yet. So things that have been believed for eons are still believed today, and a lot of cultural practices have been strongly held on to into today.
Right. Did that? We'll go into that a bit later about cultural practices and how it affects the way you deliver the aid. But right now we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back after these messages with more from Jess.